Lady J Meat Dudes. I'm Evan.
I am Tyler.
And we're here with Blake. He is the meat judger.
Meat judger.
This guy put on a presentation yesterday that was just this incredible. Broke down a whole leg of Wagyu beef and talked about all the different genetics, and he weighed everything out. I was just blown away by how much information this guy has, and we're so lucky to be able to chat with him. I've been following him all day, just like, I got to get this guy, I got to chat with this guy, because you're so brilliant in the meat industry, and I wanted to just introduce you to our people and kind of chat a little bit about your background and talk about kind of what you do, man, and we'll kind of get into where Wagyu beef is going and where beef is going in the future. So
you bet.
Man.
Well, thanks for having me on the podcast again. My name is Blake Foraker. I'm currently a meat scientist at Washington State University here, just down the road in Pullman, Washington.
Yep.
Been here just under 2 years, so it's been a transition from the Midwest where I grew up. So
Yep.
Kansas.
Grew up in Kansas, yes. So flatland country there. So coming to Pullman and the Palouse was a little different. But,
very different.
You know, it's neat. Washington's a neat state. You get so many different environments just in the one state and different topography, so it's pretty cool. But grew up showing livestock, and through that avenue learned about something called meat judging. And so this is actually a competitive sport, if you will, as it pertains to evaluating meat products.
I'm down.
So I was joking yesterday in the talk about marbling and with the group, about how they were identifying some key differences on the screen. I said, we already got a professional group of meat judgers, and it's actually a thing. So I did that in 4-H and then went on to Kansas State University to get an animal science degree. But during my time there, that was one of the extracurriculars that I participated in. So I did wool judging. You probably didn't know that was a thing either. But wool judging.
Wow,
right? So which fleece is better than another fleece? So they do that freshman year. You do meat judging the next year.
Yeah.
That's kind of the sequence that oftentimes many of these students are doing. And you might ask, well, what does meat judging entail, or what do you do?
Just going to ask you.
So we spend a lot of time in packing plants and a lot of time in coolers looking at carcasses, so beef, pork, and lamb carcasses, and then also the primal cuts from those carcasses. And then we're evaluating, oftentimes it's 4 cuts in a class, and then you're ranking those cuts from their most value in the industry to the least value. And so, for example, let me provide a concept of meat judging to you to provide an understanding. So in beef, right, what's important?
Tenderloin, ribeye.
Well, no, but what trait? Marbling. That's right.
Sorry.
So generally we would rank the cuts that have more marbling, or the carcasses that have more marbling, higher in the class than we would others. And that's just to keep it simple. Now, in something like pork, on a commodity basis, the traits that are important in evaluating pork would be trimness. We want leaner, at least in this industry. And I know I'm talking with chefs here, and so we could talk about some challenges with pork as it pertains to eating quality. But nevertheless, the value in our industry is derived from the amount of lean content that we can get from that carcass or that cut. So that's just some concept where we teach the students, hey, you need to rank these cuts this certain way, and their ability to achieve the correct official is how they're scored and then ranked amongst the other contestants. They also there's some grading components. They have to grade 15 carcasses, both yield grade and quality grade. We talked about those things yesterday in the talk. Then there's also a communication portion of it where they actually have to. So they rank 4 exhibits, and then they have to defend why they ranked those exhibits in the order by which they did. And so albeit we're using meat, but we're using it as an avenue to teach critical thinking skills and skills that will advance those students well beyond meat. I mean, there's lots of students that'll do this and go to do things totally outside of agriculture. So become lawyers or doctors or physicians or whatever it is. But we use this as a tool to teach them those things. And so it's something that I'm really passionate about. Livestock judging does a very similar thing. You probably heard of that as well on the live animal side. So I've been involved in coaching some teams. Brought a team back here to WSU the first year that I was here. First year they'd competed in more than 50 years, and they won their first contest at the Denver. So
nice.
It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
And I'm passionate about it because it gets students involved in doing things like what we're doing here. And understanding the industry and making great industry connections to build a career.
So how did you jump from commodity judging to not commodity.
To Wagyu.
To Wagyu
Well, Jerry.
beef.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
I mean,
definitely not commodity.
the connection with Jerry Reeves has been awesome, and he's been super
Right.
supportive. And he's been around the business for so many years. He understands all sides of it, both Wagyu and non-Wagyu, and certainly the Wagyu market is growing in the U.S. and there's different traits of emphasis in Wagyu than what there are maybe the conventional beef population, but I
Yes.
think at the same breath, a lot of similarities as well, and I think learnings probably from both sectors that each sector can learn from the other. That's important. So really, the connection's been Jerry in getting into the Wagyu.
The granddaddy.
That's
Yeah,
right.
He's the Godfather.
Man. Yeah, no, we
Freaking
love
Jerry.
it, man. He was so great to talk to you this morning too. It's been so cool here, man. But what do people? You talk about people taking like that class that go on and do different things, but what's the majority of the people that you're teaching? Like, why are you teaching them this skill? What is it going to do for the industry overall?
Yeah. So the two primary courses that I teach here at WSU are the meat science class, and so that's an introductory course to the conversion of the live animal into its meat products. And so we talk about all of the steps from ante-mortem to when the animal's live, and so like factors that might influence meat quality like genetics and nutrition, and then we talk about the harvest process and converting that animal into the carcass, and how there's so many steps that occur in that process that need to be done right, not just animal welfare, but like chilling and how we bleed the animal and time.
Oh, wow.
and so, but I'm saying even separate from stress, like we have to do things in the conversion of muscle to meat, as we call it, just perfectly, okay, before we can even get to evaluate the amount of marbling in the animal, because there can be some major things that we can screw up, stress being one of them. We can screw up chilling of a carcass though too, and have major problems when it comes to tenderness, and then we teach the students how to fabricate the carcasses all the way down into retail cuts. And so
Wow.
and so that's that's just the meat science course, and so it's rather comprehensive, and we get pretty deep in the content, and I make the students memorize the different muscles that we were talking about yesterday. Many of the students are going on to vet school, and so they've told me that their first semester in vet school, their anatomy and physiology, they have to know the names of the muscles and where they are. It makes a lot of sense. And
Just for our common listeners, real quick, I wasn't here for the breakdown yesterday. Sorry, I missed that, but I was here to eat those muscles.
Yeah.
And
Just in
you
time.
were giving me the muscles and telling me the names
Yeah,
of these
that's
muscles,
right.
and I was like, the fuck are you talking about? I mean, the spinalis, everybody knows the rib cap, right?
Yeah.
What did we have yesterday?
So we had several. We had semimembranosus. We had adductor. We
my
had
favorite.
rectus femoris. We had vastus medialis. We had vastus lateralis. I'm trying to think. We had pectineus. So
And that all came from
the round. That's
round,
correct. So the
yes.
leg of the animal.
yes.
Yeah, you're
Okay, we
correct.
saw you breaking that down.
Yep.
Wow.
There you go.
I want to take this course. man.
Repeat.
I
See if you can-
totally want to take this course.
But but that's an important concept. I mean, as a meat scientist, one of the kind of trademarks of the discipline has been profiling all of the muscles in the carcass. And so, and specifically as we talk about the species, we can do that in cattle because these muscles are so much bigger than what they might be in a lamb or a pig, right? So, albeit we've profiled them in the other species, but it's really applicable to cattle because there's some stakeable items out of some of these smaller muscles that can still have very good eating qualities, profiles.
Yeah.
And that's what we demonstrated yesterday.
I was gonna say, I mean, the goal of yesterday was to show you that you could take that whole round, that leg, and there's actually really cool steaks in there.
That's
and you're
right.
pulling out. What was
Crazy.
that one? The simple. What was it called? That one little muscle that you pulled out.
That was the pectineus. I call that the round petite tender.
The round petite tender.
Yeah, it sits right up against the femur bone.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a cool one. I got to actually try that one. Man, that was dope. Well, what do you think
Evan
about
ate his weight in meat yesterday. I
Oh
think.
my god! I know these
Yeah.
guys. We were leaving, and they were like, "Dude, I'm starving." I'm like, "Yes, we're starving." I was standing next to that table over there, brother. I was just like, I'm full as hell. Oh man! I mean, I really want to get your perspective. I think on the future of Wagyu beef. Because I feel like it's starting to not hit the masses, but the general public is a little bit more open-minded than they were even 5-10 years ago. They don't think it's just the most expensive piece of meat that you can buy and it's only for celebrations. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on where Wagyu beef will be in the next 5 or 10 years on the consumer side?
Well, I think to piggyback off of what we talked about in yesterday's talk, I mean, I think that some of these maybe lesser known cuts that they might be a little harder to get out of the carcass from a fabrication standpoint, and that is real. That's a challenge when it comes to butchery.
Yeah.
But I guess kind of my point and my message was that in a Wagyu carcass, it's worth it because there's the eating quality of some of these cuts from these higher marbled cattle like Wagyu, and we haven't talked about the difference in flavor as well, right? The contribution of the different fatty acid profile in Wagyu, but the combination of those two things, the increased marbling and then the fatty acid composition of the marbling in Wagyu, it lends itself to greater utilization of a greater variety of muscles in the carcass, and to the point, like for example, the rectus femoris that we pulled out yesterday, the center of the sirloin tip. I mean, that's a muscle that in Wagyu, that's a steakable item, and it's an item that isn't a $40 or $50 a pound steak,
totally.
Right? Yeah. And in many cases, in conventional beef, that item's going in a trim. Yeah. And so, but in Wagyu, we can create a very acceptably tender, flavorful, dry cookery, item that a consumer can take home and have a great eating experience with at a low price point.
Yeah,
totally.
We talk about
That's
that with
amazing.
the ranch steak, right?
Yeah, ranch steaks for sure.
We don't
the
bring
London
in prime,
Royal.
Yeah.
We don't bring in prime ranch steaks, but the Wagyu ones,
Top
people
sirloin.
go crazy for. Oh, we see a big difference in Wagyu
Dude,
top sirloin.
Wagyu top sirloin.
Yes.
Yeah, we see the
phenomenal.
big difference. Yeah,
And I'm assuming you're not even talking culotte yet, which is one of my favorite
No,
muscles.
exactly.
Right?
No,
not even culotte.
Culotte.
I was surprised that a lot of people didn't know what that was yesterday because we sell the hell out of it.
Yeah.
We sell
Picanha?
hell out of it. Yeah. I mean, it's
That's
one
one
of
of
our
my.
favorites.
What I tell you, I think it's one of my top 3 muscles. But you
Yeah.
know what? I was talking to somebody else today about muscles. I left one out there. Sirloin flap, bavettes.
Oh, yeah.
That's
You got to get that one in there.
Yeah,
For sure.
That was
That's a good one.
I think that was one of my favorite ones when I first had Wagyu.
Yeah,
That was when
you
I was
did like
I
that
was
a lot.
rolling with a bavette just
Yeah.
because it's so thick. It's like deceivingly thick in the middle, and it's just perfectly tender. And I learned that when I'm making those bavettes, I have to pre-slice it after I'm done cooking it and resting it because if I get in there with a steak knife, it just tears apart because it's almost like so tender.
Yeah.
It was just such a beautiful cut, man.
Wagyu it's just insane. It's just amazing, and the more that we can educate people that don't be scared of it because everyone's like, oh my god, it's $1 million. Like, no, it's like there's so many cuts that are like generally would go into a trim cut or something like that are totally edible, and they're it's cheap.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think
do it right.
To answer your question, where's Wagyu headed in 5-10 years? I think we're gonna realize greater utilization and understanding of the carcass for from a consumer standpoint, that there are maybe a consumer needs to start looking at some of these lesser known cuts. Pay attention, like, hey, look, it's not always the New Yorks, the ribeyes, and the tenders, right? It's so much more, especially when it comes to Wagyu.
1,000%.
We have blown people's minds by the percentage of those, we call them the Hollywood cuts. New York ribeye tenderloin is like 8% of a 1,000-pound carcass.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And they're like, that's all I buy. What happens to the
all
rest
they
of the
know,
animal?
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. I mean, God didn't make the beef animal to have 100% ribeyes,
Yes.
New Yorks, and tenders, right? Like, we still have a whole other. Well, if you did 92% of the carcass that we gotta utilize, and I guess the point is that in particularly in Wagyu, you can utilize a lot more of it than maybe you can in a conventional beef.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that we should all raise Wagyu.
Well, I mean, but I think that at the same breath, there's also, there's merit to both systems, right?
Sure.
The Wagyu and the non-Wagyu, right? And there will always be a place for the native beef population, and so and there's still very, very good cuts that come out of that native beef population, and so I think it's important, Wagyu, from a consumer standpoint, maybe becomes more widespread with some of these lesser-known cuts. But I think in the native beef population, we're going to see continued increases in marbling. The beef industry, just in general in the U.S., has done a great job. If we look today versus where we were in the 90s, the beef quality audits have tracked the progress. I think we're now 15% select in our industry, trying to veer away from that. And I always remind people there's always going to be a need for some of the lower-end beef cuts. Select, right? You're always going to need lower price points for some consumers.
Yep.
But now I think as an industry, irrespective of Wagyu, we're chasing more upper two-thirds choice and prime, and that's probably where we're going to stay for the next 10 years.
Great.
I have a favor to ask. Can you create a new beef marbling scale for the U.S. because the one you showed yesterday, didn't it tap out? What
So Dan Janot with AgriBeef presented some data, and he's worked very extensively with the camera, and so that's the tool by which we're obtaining an objective measurement of marbling. So it takes a picture of the ribeye, and we do this between the 12th and 13th ribs on the carcass. And it's measuring the flecks of fat. But what he was demonstrating is that, especially in Wagyu and these really highly marbled Wagyu, that there's actually a limitation to the camera at a marbling score of 1199, such that pretty much if it's over 1199, it won't measure anything. Yeah, and he was showing some distributions where the far end, it spiked at the very far end of the marbling scale because there's a fair number of cattle that exceed the limitation of the camera. So
that's nuts.
Yeah,
I know. And like we were talking to Jerry this morning, he was saying, in Japan they have beef marbling scale that goes higher. In Australia they do it as well too. But for us, we kind of we cut it at prime, and we're kind of almost not ready for it yet.
Well, and I would say that there are inner workings happening right now.
Okay.
So USDA is they actually just recently updated.
You heard it here.
They recently provided new pictographs for average prime and high prime, and then they're working on beyond prime or above prime. Or prime plus, and so that's coming to the industry. So it's being realized. So
will they call it Wagyu or will they call it Prime Plus?
Well,
Super Prime
is the actually, and that's actually the term that they're using. Super Prime.
Super Prime, man.
Yep.
I like it.
That's funny.
It's gonna be my next fantasy football team.
Super Prime.
That's right,
dude. It's gonna be my next meat judging team.
There
you go.
You're gonna go to fucking school.
I know. Yeah. Right. Get my ass whipped out there. Well, man, is there anything else you want the world to know about Wagyu beef?
Well, I think it's an exceptional product, and
it's
crazy good.
I just think that consumers should ask more questions about ask more questions beyond the New York, beyond the tenderloin, beyond the ribeye.
Get to know your butcher.
Yeah,
there you go.
Know where your meat comes from.
Yeah, no, for real. That's what we try to do. We have all the different cuts, and we sell all the different cuts. When somebody comes in and they're looking at ribeyes, I know we'll make more money selling the ribeye, but have you ever tried the skirt? Because skirt's one of our favorites.
Forgot to put my other favorite muscle in there is the Terrace Major.
Oh, I love that one too. So now
you like the minerality.
The shoulder petite tender. Okay, so now the round petite tender.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so that the Terrace Major is the shoulder petite tender.
Right. Don't try to
the round petite tender. I don't know what it's called. I will. No, dude.
There you go.
I'm gonna pull it out from the video and make sure I get that going. I'm gonna say our Alex, who does all the what's it called? The closed captions. She's gonna have a hell of a time with this one.
She's gonna have one. She's gonna the what?
You're like, God,
the how? She's gonna have a dictionary out.
I love it. Well, Blake, man, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
man.
you bet.
I appreciate it, man. And hopefully they're having a good auction here, and hopefully we can stay in touch, man, because we really want to be able to utilize you as a resource. If we have questions and things like that, and if you have questions for us from the consumer's perspective, we'd love to just keep chatting.
Or if you ever open a restaurant.
Yeah, especially that. Yeah.
Stick to the meat game, bro.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't need to, man. Well, let's sign it off, man. I'm Evan.
Tyler.
Blake.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah, have a good one. Love it.